For more than over a year, I've been pushing my black and white film 2 stops with no exception, and I'm sticking to it. Let me explain why, and then you can decide for yourself if you should do that too. Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk It Over. When I started out with black and white film years ago, Kodak Tri-X was the film stock that I took with me everywhere. There was just something about that contrast and grain that I really enjoyed. It just had a look to it. Shot it at box speed for a while until I encountered a situation where I really wished I had a faster speed film with me. That's when I decided to push it 1 stop for the first time, and I think those photos came out incredible. By the way, if you are new to pushing and pulling film, I've got a full episode where I explain exactly what it is. I'll link it down below. But in short, it's really tricking your camera that there's a higher speed film inside of it. So let's say you are shooting a 400 speed film and you want to push it 2 stops. That means that you need to put the light meter to 1600 and tell the lab that they need to push it in development. But again, if you want a full explanation, I've got you covered in another episode. Running around and doing that for a while, I wanted to know what the hype was all about Ilford HP5. People really swear by this film and it should be amazing to push, because unlike Tri-X, HP5 has a really flat look if you shoot it at box speed. This is great because then you are able to do a lot more in post, or of course push it in development. Shortly after my first few rolls of HP5, I decided to push it 2 stops to 1600 and commit to it on every single roll in the future. This is where my love story about HP5 and pushing it 2 stops really began. It's also pretty cost effective because here in the Netherlands a roll of Tri-X goes for around 13 euros. The Ilford HP5 costs 9 euros, and that's for 35mm film. Most likely it will cost you a bit more if you're telling the lab that they need to push the film. In my experience, it's always 1 euro or $1 for every stop that you push it. But of course, black and white film is most of the time cheaper than color film, and if you're bulk loading your film, then it's even more cost efficient. So now you're thinking, okay, all good, that pushing it to 1600, but how about shooting it in direct sunlight? Won't it blow out the whole image? Well, I can tell you that HP5 really handles it well. Here are some shots that were taken in that situation. I just set my aperture to f16 and my shutter speed to 1/500. And then I know it's going to be alright. You could also bring an ND filter if you have one, because you might want to open up the aperture more or take a slower shutter speed, for instance. But in every situation, I know that I'm not blowing out the highlights. Where pushing film really shines is in those situations where you wished you had a little bit more light. For instance, like during a show or an event, or maybe when you are capturing moments with your family indoors. These are some perfect examples where I needed a higher shutter speed while there was only a little bit of light. But remember that you are not actually shooting a 1600 speed film. When you are pushing the film, it raises the contrast. So if something is in the shadows, those shadows will be darker and those highlights will be pulled up. If there is no light to work with, even pushing your film will not work. HP5 has a nice soft grain when you shoot it at box speed, but if you follow me for a while, you know that I like that gritty, grainy look. Pushing it 2 stops really brings out that nice structure, and it brings the image to life, in my opinion. If you're not into that, then I highly suggest you do not push your film, because this is one of the effects that it most certainly has. Here are some of my most favorite shots on black and white film that I pushed 2 stops. So to sum it up, when would I recommend somebody to push their film a couple of stops? The first and most obvious to me is that you just like the look of it. The grain, the added contrast is just what you're looking for. Second, you shoot a lot of situations where you really need that 1 or 2 stops of extra light. So let's say an event where you really need a higher shutter speed to freeze the action. I've done that a couple of times the last year and it came in clutch. And the third one, and this might not be the obvious one, when you shoot throughout the day and you get into the evening, it's nice to continue shooting on the same roll. Pushing it to 1600 means that you can manage those dimmed situations. But this does mean that you have to close down your aperture or shoot at a higher shutter speed during the daylight. Another benefit, if you are always pushing it, your work will have the same consistent look over all of your black and white images. But of course, there are also some things to say about why you should not push your film. Maybe you never shoot in any low light situation, or you just always have a tripod on you, or maybe you really hate grain and you want the most dynamic range that the film has to offer. Then you're better off shooting it at box speed, I think. These are all personal opinions, of course, and not everybody likes the same stuff. But if you haven't tried it before, it wouldn't hurt doing it once or twice. I hope you have enjoyed this episode. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comment section down below. Stay tuned because our trip to Italy will be on this channel very soon, and there will be a lot more other content that I'm really excited about. But for now, thanks for watching and I'll see you next week. Peace.